Hey everybody, welcome to episode 6 of Dr. D's Discussions. We got the power panel in fucking place, baby.
Yep.
I cursed in the first 20 seconds. Goodness gracious. Trying to cut back. But we have Lee the Scientist, Lee Agostini, we have Nate Velazquez,
What's up?
our resident co-host, and myself, Dave Deming. Tonight we're going to be talking about high caloric diets and the associated risks with colorectal cancer in particular, but also we'll touch about some other cancer and longevity and different things like that. I know Lee's got rip-roaring bunch of statistics for protein pathways that I know the scientists out there are going to just gobble up, so to speak. Guys, do you have any opening statements?
Of course, go ahead and follow me at Lee the Scientist on Instagram. There will be a long, extended post about some of the things that we talk about here.
Yep,
So,
and we're going to be following up with website URL. Lots of big changes coming. Dave and Lee been working real hard. So we'll share that in the comments as well. Big stuff on the horizon, guys. Big stuff.
It's good stuff.
Yeah.
And just so everyone knows, Rose is going to be posting the slides that we're presenting tonight in the Facebook live stream. And for those of you that are on YouTube, I believe you'll be able to see the screen pretty adequately. However, we will also post the slideshow up there as well. And we'll give you our list of sources at the end. So let's go in. Let's talk about something light, like cancer statistics.
Yeah.
You know? So I'm just going to start off with the overall risk for cancer development over the course of a lifetime. Males have a 1 in 2 chance of developing cancer in their life, and females have a 1 in 3 chance of getting cancer in their life. And that means anywhere that you see on this particular list, whether that's prostate, breast, lung, colorectal, urinary, pick a body part.
And Dave, all these stats, where'd they come from?
So this is from the American Cancer Society's website, cancer.org, and I would say that they're probably the premier entity. In
They are the cancer statistic site.
Exactly. And if you guys ever want, they do put out a yearly estimate on new cases and yearly deaths based upon statistical analysis and metadata coming together from all the hospitals across the country. Specifically, this is for the American statistics. As you can see, the top 3 are going to be prostate and breast, respectively, for women and men, lung and bronchus, and that's actually been on the decline, and then colorectal, colon and rectal cancers are third. So we'll be discussing a nice little study where we're going to go into a little bit of detail about paracrine hormones and endocrine hormones, especially uroguanilin and guanilin signaling in the colorectal, what's called the intestinal epithelium.
And you're going to break those down for us lamos, right, Dave?
Yeah, yes, definitely.
Right.
And actually, Lee here has got some fascinating notes that will really try to make it much more approachable.
I'll try.
But the chances of death, I wanted to bring this one up as well. Males is 1 in 4, and females is 1 in 5. And
Colorectal cancer is a bad boy.
It is. But this is in particular for all chances of death from all the types of cancers that you see listed up here. And basically what that means is 25% of people are going to die from cancer if they're men, and then 20% are going to die if they're females. And the reason for that discrepancy is actually the hormone testosterone. And it'll actually lower the immune system and cause more of the bad cells to escape, or evade detection and death. So
just kind of a segue on the hormonal part real quick. There's some interesting statistics that we'll go into as far as obesity is concerned with the risk increase for breast cancer. But there's a serious difference statistically from postmenopausal women and premenopausal women because of the presence of female hormones, including estrogen and progesterone, in premenopausal women. Postmenopausal, which is the increase, not necessarily an increase in testosterone, but there's less female hormonal, they have a higher risk for cancer.
That makes
And
sense.
it's because of this hormonal obesity interplay associated with cancer levels.
That might be also why hormone replacement therapies also increase the risk of cancers. I know testosterone replacement therapy, my dad's going through testosterone replacement therapy, and that's one of the things that I always tell him. Higher levels of testosterone, either you're going to have a heart attack because the blood, it gets thicker, or you have an increased chance of cancer.
I hope that's something that they share with people when they go for hormonal therapy, even if it's something under the armpit, you know?
They do if you have a good doctor. And that's the thing. If you have a doctor that's just trying to peddle drugs to you and just get you in and out, on your way, it might not come up, and it might not be covered as extensively as it should be. And, we can get into a pharmaceutical, big pharma day a little bit later down the line. But let's talk about hunger and what causes one to be hungry, what causes somebody to be full. Other than the pressure on the stomach, it's going to be ghrelin for making you hungry. It's a hormone released by the stomach, and actually it acts on the hypothalamus. That's a particular region in the brain that does a whole slew of different things. It's kind of like the thermostat of your body. It detects if you have too much acid in your bloodstream, if you have too much CO2, which becomes bicarbonate. Yeah. That's basically how it detects, if you need to yawn. So even there, the hypothalamus is kind of like the
big picture overview of what we say, like ghrelin, the hormone is released by our stomach. Essentially, eat food, stomach fills up, releases ghrelin. That signals to your brain, hey, stop eating.
Yep. And then leptin on the other side is more of a long-term hormone. So think of it like this. When your gas light comes on and you're like about to hit E, and you have, I think it's extra 20 miles when I hit that E light come on. But leptin is your body's way of saying, hey, we need to get some food in us. I'm hungry. I really need to get the energy demands that I need to keep going. So basically, it's there to tell you, hey, you need some gas. So pull over, grab some food, charge up.
Speaking of energy demands, this web series is sponsored by Nuts. I wish it was, actually.
Oh, jeez.
I don't want to sell out.
I would sell it for some vitamin water.
Yeah.
Legit, yeah.
You heard that vitamin water? We're calling you.
Yeah, what's up? All right.
I'll get on that.
And right now, can we target these hormones? Kind of, yes. Rosette actually gave me an addendum to this where they do actually target this, but it's not necessarily the best way to treat obesity. And I don't know about the statistics on it. However, I don't think a hormone replacement for obesity is going to be the catch-all for everybody who needs to lose weight.
Right.
In particular, I don't see many people getting prescribed this, so I can't really think that's like their number one go-to.
I can see the compliance being low on the treatment like this. Obesity is it's a rough one to do because a lot of obesity is associated with genetics and inheritable risk for obesity. So even if you can treat some of these people with hormone replacement, people are still going to be genetically predisposed for this type of for obesity.
Now, would there be like any foods that might have more ghrelin in it that might be able to supplement in your diet, or is this like an external source where you're getting it from?
So you don't get it externally, so it's an endogenous. So you think exogenous, endogenous, internal. It's an internally made hormone. So it's your body's own way of saying, hey, you need to check something, or hey, you're really full, stop eating.
Gotcha.
You can have a dysregulation of this. I know that's a particular cause of obesity. In particular, I know that it's only a sliver of the whole mechanistic point of view, and that leads me into the next slide, where it's pretty complicated, and this isn't the whole picture. So we don't even know all the different hormones that are involved in this particular pathway.
So Dave,
just with
for people that might be having a difficult time seeing what this is, just kind of describe us what this chart is of, if you could, in like a high level.
Okay, so I'm going to use my little laser pointer right here for the anorexic effects. Basically, everyone knows anorexia means you're not eating. So your anorexic effects are going to be like, hey, stop eating. This is the time where, you feel full. So, and on the other flip side of it is your orexic effects. So your ghrelin is going to, tell you like, hey, you're hungry, you need to eat, blah, 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 blah. Remember, leptin is more of the long-term hormone where it's not going to give you that instant satisfaction that you're full, or instant gratification that you're full. However, it's going to tell you, hey, I need more energy. You're running a little. If you ever dragged, after not eating for a while, or you get a headache, it's basically along that line. But it's just two different pathways. It all centers around the hypothalamus, like I had said previously, the center of your brain that's pretty much in control of everything.
Leptin is going to play an interesting role when we get into the risk associated with cancer later, when we talk about obesity and breast cancer. I'm just throwing that in there just to pay attention to the keyword for leptin later.
Okay, so this schematic drawing shows the pathways by which leptin and ghrelin may reach the hypothalamus in order to have an effect on food intake and body weight. Leptin is secreted by adipose tissue, and ghrelin is secreted by the stomach. So adipose tissue,
fat cells.
Fat. That. And, that kind of comes back to, I wanted to ask Nate, I know you were a personal trainer as well. So, how many times have you had a client that really worked hard, ate a good diet, and, didn't lose the weight as quickly as they had imagined?
It's probably one of the more common problems I think trainers find is that you've had people that are really enthusiastic at the gym, and then when they leave, they think that's a majority of the work they need to do. They say abs are made in the kitchen. They say that for a reason. It's all like your mate.
Goddamn Twinkies.
Yeah.
Twinkies, man.
Yeah, your performance is based on, the fuel that you feed your body. Again, going back to the car, you can put in regular or you can put in Supreme. You put in Supreme,
you're gonna
car's probably going to be pretty happy, yeah.
You're going to be spinning out those tires, getting going, yeah. So leptin and ghrelin both stimulate and suppress hypothalamic neurons containing various neuropeptides, resulting in anorexic or orexic effects on energy balance. And that's basically, just what this is saying.
So how do these hormones segue into cancer risk?
So basically, the new kids on the block. That's we're going to go from leptin and ghrelin. So leptin and ghrelin really never got. Well, I know that you're going to say that leptin has been involved in some types of cancers, but from my understanding is that those aren't necessarily the nitty-gritty hormones, not the hormones that are going to control on a cellular level, but more on a global level.
Yeah.
So think of it like, your car's like little dashboard lights. That's your leptin and your ghrelin. The new kids on the block, uroguanolin and guanolin are more of like your, do we get the oil change on time? Did we get the different things like that? And basically what they're trying to do is keep everything in the car running.
Sure.
So they'll signal to your tires, hey, we need to stay straight. And I know I'm bending the analogy a little bit, but I'm trying to make it as approachable as possible with this.
I think you're doing good. I like your car analogy.
So, and if these two hormones are elucidated in the study to satiate, get dysregulate the satiated feeling you get. So that can actually work hand in hand with ghrelin and leptin in terms of the signaling. Now, I don't know. I believe uroguanolin is it's an endocrine hormone where it will go into the bloodstream, other than in the intestinal lumen, which is the you have your intestine with a little hole in the inside of it, and that's where the food passes through, and that's basically how your body absorbs nutrients and different things like that. However, uroguanolin will be paracrine, and it'll signal to all the cells along the epithelium of the intestine. So all the cells that line the intestine, and basically that'll signal to them, hey, we need to keep going, we need to absorb more food, and it'll actually give a signal back to the brain to say, hey, I'm either hungry or not hungry. Maybe not as much as the influence that ghrelin and leptin influence on the brain in terms of feeling satiated, but it also plays into a role to really keep the whole system under control. So this leads to the whole system being very complex and complicated, and not one hormone controls the system. And I put this in there. Many layers of regulation. I wanted to point that out.
Your testis is a beautiful barrier.
Yes.
But more importantly,
you could say it's a big wall.
Yeah, it is. It's a big wall. Yeah, that your body is building. Except Mexico is not going to pay for it. But otherwise, I would say that more importantly, these two things have a unique mechanistic interaction that is actually the reason why we're having this discussion. Mm-hmm. How do these things lead to cancer? Exactly. Or how do they increase your risk for cancer?
So, and then that leads into the next note right here. Overeating causes the system to be overworked. So the analogy that I gave Nate was that you overwork the machine and it'll break down. And we'll be coming up onto a slide to represent this complexity and the signaling of that system. But think of it as like your car. You're hitting the gas, you're going 3,000 miles, 6,000, 10,000, 20,000 miles without an oil change. So essentially, you're basically beating the crud out of your car to the point where it's going to start breaking down. You're going to lose a part here, you're going to lose a part there. It might still go, but it's going to be malfunctioning, it's not going to be working properly, and you're not doing the routine maintenance that you need to keep it the proper upkeep. So in that's when your cells, going back to the cellular portion of it, is that it starts to break down and it causes dysregulation of the mechanistic pathways. And what that does is causes the cells to become cancer-like or tumorigenesis.
So it's an interesting thing that you mentioned as far as this car analogy, as far as things doing work but then not being able to repair this. Mm-hmm. So we're talking about how high caloric diets increase risk. I don't want to shame or give you this perspective that eating a lot of food is inherently bad, right? Yeah. Athletes consume a lot of calories. Weightlifters, yeah.
An example that we were talking about, or I brought up, was Lance Armstrong during the Tour de France. Mm-hmm. He ate 15,000 calories in a day, but your body was also putting out 15,000 calories worth of work.
Right.
So,
now there's an inherent risk associated with consuming calories that has to do with metabolic processes and the production of something called radical oxygen species, which inherently can lead to DNA damage and cell dysregulation. But it's important to note that being athletic combats some of these issues.
Yeah, you know, the health benefits to working out. You know, you feel like you get all the bad out, and you know, you get your cells back on track. And I really think it's kind of like going back to the car analogy, just literally doing what you need to do. You can use your car, you know,
as long as the maintenance is up to date.
You know, you can go 500,000 miles, but make sure you get an oil change every 3,000 miles. Make sure that, and that's what the thing is. You know, there's a balance between overwork and underwork and overeating and undereating. And, you know, some people, like you said, might be genetically predisposed to obesity. But when we go into a little bit more detail about the study, they used a mouse model that was predisposed to diabetes, or obesity rather. And they showed that with a low caloric diet, that they had less risk of the colorectal cancer, which I found pretty fascinating, that it doesn't necessarily mean that obesity is intertwined or wrapped up in this. It just means that if you take good care of yourself, you eat a little less, caloric restriction, you know, you're going to end up having a better vehicle. Your body will be able to go the 200, 300, 500 million miles down the road.
Lean and mean, Dave.
Lean and mean.
Let's talk about the downstream effectors. You talked about these guanylin and uroguanylin. These two things are paracrine hormones. But how hormones work and how proteins work is that they bind to receptors. And the receptor that we're really going to focus on here that results in this molecular interaction, not to get too bogged down.
Do you want to say it? You want to say the receptor?
So let's try this out. Because last time I was here, I was having, verbal issues. Guanyl cyclase C, that wasn't that bad.
No, I think that's the hormone. But,
that's the receptor. Guanyl cyclase C, yeah. So we're just going to call that GCC going forward.
Yeah.
So
all the analogies. But basically what we have here is what is the... I keep forgetting I have the laser pointer guy. It's so awesome. So think of this down here as the basement of your entire intestine. So you have a layer called your basal membrane, and basically from there you have stem cells that will proliferate and move on up and go in more towards where your food is, the hole of your intestine. Not saying that you have a hole in your intestine, but think of it as like a fire hose, or just a hose in general. You have your hose wall that has your basement membrane here, and as you get these signals from uroguanylin and guanylin, it'll cause a differentiation, and as you can see, these oxphos, you get a little bit more oxidative phosphorylation rather than having just stem cells. So there's a change in the metabolism of these types of cells, going from a not mature cell to a mature cell at the very tip of what's called the villus. And
just to segue, not to segue, but just to add to the point that we're talking about stem cells in this process is because there's high turnover in the intestinal tract. The reason why there is proliferating cells there to begin with is because as these cells get used, they die and new cells replace them.
They get sloughed off or different things like that.
And that's just through normal use, right?
This is a normal biological function, and that these cells are naturally more proliferative than other cells.
So a relatable cell type would be skin. It's also an epithelial cell where you've ever had dry skin or you scratched, and that's why you wash, and then you wash your sheets because you have dead skin sloshing.
You're actually flaking off yourself, essentially.
Which
might sound a little
gross.
Yeah, it's just like snakes, though. Shed your skin.
It's just like snakes.
Unified.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, I like that. I like that
a lot. But think of it like that. If you have these skin cells growing and growing and growing, and if you didn't be able to slosh the dead ones off
and replace those cells with newer functioning cells,
you wouldn't be able to have your epidermis. So basically, the whole thing that we're showing here is just going from a premature cell in the crypt. I like that. It's in the crypt. But it goes all the way up to the villus. And at the point of the villus is where you're actually going to be absorbing the nutrients and different things like that, especially the calories, the vitamins, and all the stuff that you consume throughout the day. So I know Lee's excited for this next slide. It's the little bit of a mechanistic slide. So Lee, I'm going to let you talk about this a little bit.
This is my baby right here. So, all right. So just to touch on this real quick, like we said earlier, guanylin and uroguanylin bind to a receptor called GCC. Now, GCP is a receptor that also has catalytic ability, has enzymatic ability. And what that does is it takes a small molecule called GTP and turns that into something called cyclic GMP.
You ever heard of ATP?
I was just going to say that.
Yes, so same family.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's instead of adenosine, it's
adenosine. It's guanine. Yeah.
It's guanine.
Gotcha.
So G's, T's, C's, and A's for DNA.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Similar base compound.
Okay.
So,
Good to know.
So this receptor works. As these things bind to the receptor, they produce cyclic GMP, which leads to these downstream effects. This is called a secondary messenger molecule.
Which we have a test on Tuesday about.
Right? I got to study. I'm leaving. I'm sorry. But yeah, so these lead to downstream effects that stop cells from being cancerous. They actually have tumor suppressive effects. Based on the other downstream molecular interactions.
Yep, and in this particular model, it says metabolism, so keeping everything on an oxidative phosphorylation, which means using oxygen to make ATP, going back to the related molecules. Right. Keeping, like you said, from going to a cancer cell, genomic stability, and being able to repair the DNA. If you can't repair the DNA properly, or you have misguided signaling, you're going to become a cancer cell. You're going to start tumorigenesis. Okay. And then cell cycle control. You don't want to have your cells going sporadically going quick, split.
Yeah, just to like create like a common definition of what cell cycle control is. Your cell goes through a checklist and how it should divide. Say, hey, is my DNA replicated? Do I have enough material here? And if those things aren't checked off, then the cell doesn't divide.
So you basically just want it to maintain the same level.
So think about it this way. You're about
dysregulate that.
You're going on to a long trip. You want to check your tire pressure.
I like this car analogy.
Yeah, you want to check your gas levels. You want to make sure that your windshield's clean, your windshield wipers are good, and if they're not good, you throw a little Rain-X on it. Different things like that. So I like that. It's good. Expand upon your analogy in your list. So what happens when these ligands don't touch the receptor, or the ligands are overused, so to speak?
So the reason why high caloric intakes or a high caloric diet affects this pathway is because when you overeat, you produce less of the signaling molecules that bind to this receptor. And because there's less of those molecules there, the receptor doesn't function. So you have a reduction in the cyclic GMP. Now, just to think about this in a conceptual standpoint. Normally, we shake hands, and that handshake tells my body to do something.
Yeah.
But you disappear, so we can't shake hands anymore. And because there is a lack of handshaking, things start to occur in my body. And in this case, those things increase your cancer risk in these types of cells.
Nice. It could also be, going back to the car analogy, your gas light doesn't check, you fill up, the E symbol doesn't come on. All of a sudden you're going pop. Oh, what happened? I'm out of gas. It's similar to that. So, and I know that this Linzess was also used in one of their studies. Lee, what can you tell me about Linzess?
Okay, so Linzess is the brand name of this compound that I'm not even going to try and say, but Linzess, how it works is that it is an agonist, or it acts like some of the hormones that are already in your body, specifically guanylate and urguanylate. And how that works is that it activates the receptor, restoring that receptor function that is missing because of overeating. So thus, you lower your cancer risk and restore normal function. And how this actually increases your cancer risk is because when this receptor is not functioning properly, GCC, what you have here is the cells become dysfunctional. And as these epithelial cells become dysfunctional, they are more predisposed to cancer signaling or cancer tumorigenesis or initiation, so to speak.
And as I went over to the next slide, I know this is also one of Lee's favorite slides because it has a lot of protein pathways. And basically what...
I'm elated right now, actually.
Yeah, he's jumping up and down for joy. He's actually doing backflips in his head. So, as he said, cyclic GMP is a second messenger, and it goes downstream and affects a whole slew of different proteins, including PDEs, PKAs, which are protein kinases and phosphodiesterases. And downstream of that is AKT, which is a protein that's always, well, not always, but a high significant number of cancers that are misregulated.
Right. So it's a normally functioning protein pathway that occurs in your body, but when this thing is overexpressed, or an overexpressed, I mean its activity is greater than it should be, cells start to do wacky shit and turn cancerous.
Now, this might be a little bit of bro science, but I was listening to a podcast a couple of days ago. Basically was saying how when you eat fruits or basically anything that's a little sweeter, you get fuller faster. Like no one wants to eat like 3 or 4 oranges in a row. Versus pretzels or something with like a salt compound behind it.
That's caloric density.
Yeah, and it also has to do with fruits are higher in fiber, and non-digestible fiber inherently makes you more full. Not so much about the actual calories associated
Sure.
with it, but it's the undigestible material, cellulose actually, that's found in fruits and vegetables that make you more full.
And I know that, stemming from that, a lot of people eat very dense foods, like you'll eat a cheeseburger or something like that in comparison to like kale, fruits, veggies, and different things that are usually bigger and more, they take up more room.
Right.
Obviously.
Even though they're lower in total calories, a salad is twice the size of a sundae.
Yeah.
Sure.
But I would say it's a lot more than twice the calories.
You got a hell of a sundae.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's basically, and I know you wanted to touch a little on mTOR.
So I wanted to touch a little bit on mTOR and AKT and how the downstream effects are associated with tumorigenesis here. Ultimately, AKT and mTOR have downstream. They affect downstream molecules that lead to depressing some of the proteins that are guarding the cell from becoming tumorigenesis. One of these pathways is when you have reduced GCC, you get an activation of beta-catenin. Beta-catenin binds to something called the, I think I have it written here, it calls the T4 chromatin complex. What this does is it binds to DNA, and it turns on certain genes such as MYC, something I'm actually studying currently, and it turns off other genes that are tumor suppressors. One of these other pathways is AKT leads to overexpression of something called MDM2. MDM2 is a protein that pretty much puts stickers on another protein and tells it, hey, something come destroy this.
Yeah, we got to break it down. And that in particular is P53, which is a tumor suppressor protein.
A super well-known protein that's pretty much called the guardian of the cell.
100% of cancers usually have
actually 50% of all cancers, and some lymphomas, the occurrence of P53 dysregulation is very high, close to that. But all cancers, regardless of the cell type, whether it be butthole or breast, have dysregulation in P53 for some reason.
Yeah, and I know downstream right next to the, right here, the BAD, that's a anti-apoptotic protein. So basically when your cell
What does anti-apoptotic mean, actually?
So basically...
You guys do about a bunch of acronyms. We have no idea what they mean.
So bad. It's a bad protein. It's a bad family channel. So basically what this does, it keeps the cell from actually committing suicide. So if a cell gets the signals that it's not necessarily doing the right things, it's overproliferating, it's just dividing way too quickly that it shouldn't be.
There's more stress, all types of factors.
It's literally not looking at the checklist, of the cell cycle and going, oh wow, we're not stopping for this, we're not stopping for this. It's like saying, oh, my wheel's a little wobbly, but I'm going to still keep going.
Exactly.
Sure.
Inherently that increases your risk of a crash, and in our instance, that crash is cancer.
And I know mTOR is related to a lot of metabolism-based things.
Right. So overexpression of mTOR leads to the production of more molecules required for energy. So a cell has this, just a basic concept here. When a cell is dividing, it inherently needs more energy to make more materials. So an overexpression where you're producing building blocks are what we call pro-proliferative activities. Because you have more raw material to build houses with, or in this case a cell, that cell is more likely to divide.
Sure, that makes sense.
Interesting. Yeah, okay. So basically we're going to come up on our last slide, and this is just kind of like an overarching theme. The hormone basically controls hypothalamic GUCY2C, which is this GCC receptor.
This is actually the more complex, mainly because there are different versions of this receptor, so they are named differently or they have a more complex name, but GCC is the actual hormone receptor that we're talking to.
So if you have dysregulation of the uroguanylin in this case, you'll decrease your satiability,
which is fullness,
and then you'll hyperphagia, which you'll eat way more, and then it's kind of like this circular catch-22 type pathway. Yeah. So the more you eat, the less uroguanylin that you'll have, the less signaling to your hypothalamus to feel full, then you'll eat more, and then it's kind of a circle, and you just keep burning your wheels. And
the paper decides to call this a feed-forward loop.
Yep, it's positive feedback.
Right.
So basically, what does that mean, Lee?
So positive feedback is when you have a stimulus, and then that stimulus promotes the receptance of that stimulus again. So, meaning, I shake your hand, and because we shook hands, I want to shake more hands.
Yeah.
So much so that I'm just shaking all the hands I can. Usually how positive feedback works. Negative feedback would be like, you shake my hand, and I don't want to touch nobody for the rest of the day.
Nice.
But have like a bad experience.
It's like the bad experience handshake.
Yeah. And then as you go over to this side of the graph, guanylin being reduced. So the paracrine form of this, the guanylin and the uroguanylin receptors won't be activated, and it'll actually cause epithelial dysfunction and this nice word up here, tumorigenesis, or the ability to make cancer.
Right.
So I know that we touched on all these different things, but it really comes down to paracrine and endocrine. So if your signal in the brain is not getting the signal's not getting to your brain, or if it's suppressed and you're not delivering the message to the brain, your brain's going to think, oh, well, I'm still hungry. I need to keep eating and eating and eating. So that causes the snowball effect.
Overeating, yes.
And then it goes to the paracrine, where it's all these little cells right next to each other, and they're basically signaling, oh, wow, we just got to grow and grow and grow and grow, and it takes it off.
And just to describe the term paracrine, these cells are close to each other, and they're having a conversation with these molecules. And that signaling is what's creating this dysfunction in this particular area.
So all those times when your mom tells you to slow down while you're eating were definitely for a good reason.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. I like it. So basically, some I don't want to say old wives' tales or anything
Bro
like that.
science.
Bro science.
Some bro science.
It's a catch-all.
It's a catch-all. But like anything that your parents have told you through experiences and different things like that, and in terms of that type of advice, it does usually have a good scientific underpinning. Now, I'm not saying all the time,
right?
Because there's
but a lot of these things are based in fact, and this in particular with the overeating, which is different from just being obese. Obesity has its own unique tumorigenic properties. This is specific. This mechanism that we've been discussing is specifically for having high caloric intake. Yeah.
And I know that they had gone into a little bit of the obesity model versus the non-obese model. So they basically had two mice. One was a bulb C inbred strain, and one was a C57BL6. And for everybody who doesn't know what that means, it's
Nissan versus Volkswagen.
Exactly.
All right. I like
Both cars, different versions.
Exactly. So the bulb C is your Nissan, where it's predisposed to obesity. So it's a person that no matter what they do in terms of exercise or whether they change their diet, they're always going to be a little bit heavier.
So the genetic linkage towards obesity that I was talking about earlier.
Exactly. And it doesn't necessarily mean that they're fat through their own fault or not. It's just that you need to take better care in terms of not eating as much, because that's the real underpinning what this study was trying to get to. And it doesn't necessarily matter what type of diet. I know that they used high carb diet, high fat diet, a combination of the two, low for each and high for just one and the other. And throughout all these different diets and different formulations and layering on top of each other, they removed a lot of the variables, and it came down to just the sheer fact that it's high amount of food. It doesn't matter if you're eating 5 steaks or if you're eating 5 Twinkies and 5 cakes, or if you're just eating 1 steak and a little bit of veggies or different things like that. It just comes down to the fact that moderation is key, and that's what I got out of this. These couple studies is that you can be obese as long as you keep changing the oil, so to speak, getting a walk in, getting a run in, whatever you can do, depending upon your level. If you have bad hips or knees, whatever, just do what you can in terms of upkeep, in terms of just not overindulging, and that's really what I got out of that. It doesn't necessarily mean that someone who's fat is going to be inherently higher risk for cancer, unless they're eating Twinkies and bonbons every night.
Sure.
So
that makes sense.
So there's an interesting thing though. As far as the being fat thing, the overall risk for cancer with being fat isn't a blanket term. You are specifically at risk for certain cancers when you're obese. This has to do with the fact that, remember we talked about leptin earlier? Fat cells signal. They create signaling molecules called adipokines. Because they're adipocytes, they produce molecules, adipokines.
And adipokines are what type of molecule?
So they're signaling molecules that are secreted and bind to other cells. 2, for example, are leptin, which is an adipokine, and something called adiponectin.
Oh, okay.
And so leptin is overexpressed because you have more fat cells.
Sure.
And adiponectin is kind of like the anti-lectin counterpart. It decreases the type of biological actions that leptin has. And people that are obese have lower versions, or not lower versions, but lower levels of adiponectin.
Interesting. I
Yeah.
didn't know that.
This
That's
is
very fascinating.
Yeah, this is a specific risk for women in particular.
Oh, wow.
Sure.
With breast cancer.
Content,
with high BMIs and obesity.
Breasts are adipose tissue for the most part, other than the mammary.
Right.
Organs
Outside of the cellular
yeah,
tissue.
of course. That's interesting. I know that, wow, that's fascinating. I didn't know that there was an actual. I should have known that there was a counter to leptin, but
yeah, I mean, there's multiple ways that cells are trying to create regulatory systems. There's a bunch of ways to do this. Redundancy is a huge thing that occurs in biology. You create a function one way, and then you create backup systems that work in different ways but produce the same result.
Yeah, you gotta have that backup server, man.
Right,
Can't have
exactly.
everything
Yeah,
crashing
exactly.
down.
It's a good way of that.
All right, and we'll end with our sources. I wanted to give a special shout out to Dr. Waldman at Scott Waldman here at Thomas Jefferson. We looked at 3 of his particular peer-reviewed journal articles that are out for the public to read and different things like that. They've been published, and they've been published in high-level journals as well. In particular, I think it was a Nature Communications. I read I got one of the slides from. So shout out to them, and Amanda Pattison. She's one of the students in there now. She's actually in our journal club.
Cool.
Yeah. So just want to give a shout out to them. Any kind of upkeep that you guys want to go? Any type of in-house stuff? I know Lee the Scientist on IG. Follow him.
Yeah, there'll definitely be a write-up associated with this talk. I'll get started on that. And you also check out Dr. Dave Discussions on YouTube and a Facebook Live for even more content, including this PowerPoint.
Excellent.
Dave, you want to drop the website URL?
Not just yet.
Not yet? Okay.
It's still like under maintenance, and by under maintenance, I mean being written by guys that have PhDs in biology, not computer science.
Computer science.
So,
although our resident Nate here has been really helping us out. He's the marketing guy, and he's kind of the website guy too. He does a lot of that in his.
I'm just the organizer. You guys bang out the content.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call Nate.
Nate's like the PennDOT supervisor. Going back to the car analogy.
Yeah.
Me and Lee.
You guys got it.
I'm digging the shovel. Lee's over there hitting me over the head with a shovel, and Nate's just laughing at the two of us.
I'm gonna reference Nate as web design Jesus because he's definitely been
especially with the beer going on.
He's definitely been guiding us through this process. But ultimately, what the whole point of this back and forth is that we're producing a website that is going to bring you some quality scientific media going forward.
Yeah, we're going to do a blog. We're going to keep it with Dr. D discussions every week. And then we might actually do like a smaller little vlog based off of Dr. D's where it'll either be one of the 3 of us talking about a topic that we find near and dear to our heart. I know I'm going to definitely do like 5-minute short little clips and different things to explain different biological processes, maybe like synapses and immune function, but mostly sticking to what I'm good at, which is just cell biology. I know Lee, you've got a lot of experience in different things, so we'll each try to tackle things and make it more approachable. So look on the horizon for our website. We'll be giving more information soon about that. We did start the LLC.
So we are officially in business, ready to bring you guys content. I will drop a small smidget, a dash of hintness associated with this website. We plan to be up and running fully by January with quality content. So just be on the lookout. Keep following us on YouTube. Keep listening to Dr. Dave Discussions on Sundays, and we'll keep updating you with this content.
Tell your friends and family to share and like us on Facebook.
And Twitter. We also have Twitters now.
Yeah, we have
at Lee the Scientist and Dr. Dave.
Yeah, I gotta get more of my Twitter game. Nate's gonna have to train
We'll share you guys. We'll get you a couple of retweets.
Nate's gonna teach me how to tweet.
Yeah, you know how to tweet. You just need to do it more often.
Yeah, I know. All right, guys. So that's it for this week's episode of Dr. D's Discussions. Hopefully you guys learned as much as we did. And we'll see you next week. I believe we're doing Anthropocene mass I can't even word.
Yeah.
Anthropocene mass extinction, climate change, and different things along that nature. And then the following couple weeks, we're going to either do marijuana in terms of the risks associated with that with heart disease, and then developmental defects. I think more so on the lungs of like an adolescent and the brain studies.
Yeah, because there's been lots of kids across the country that have really benefited from CBD oil, for example.
Yeah.
This is definitely a pro and con episode about marijuana coming up in the next 2 weeks. by no means is this a bashing. We are here to bring you factual information
Mhm.
about what's going on in the world.
Yeah, and it's not necessarily we're going to be like, oh, go and smoke some pot. It's going to be more along the lines of what do the studies say, what does the science say, and different things like that. And then we're going to follow up the last one for the month, or not for the month, but the fourth show in a row, or in the schedule we put out, is going to be stem cell therapies. And in particular, my grandmother wanted us to look at spinal cord stem cell and different therapies like that. So we're going to give a little shout out to my grandmother, Baba. Hey.
Also, we might
look
have
into that for you.
A little update on a CRISPR study that was recently started in China.
Oh, with the in the lungs.
Yeah, they just recently CRISPR modified some cells.
What's CRISPR?
We'll get into CRISPR stands it's not a chip. It actually stands for clustered, regularly interspaced short palindromic repeats, which in a nutshell means it's a way to modify DNA in a super specific manner.
Yeah. So it's not like, just like a gunshot. It's like a shotgun blast. It's a precise sniper where we're going to take out a bad gene and put in a new gene, or just completely knock out something.
Okay, that sounds cool.
Yeah, so that kind of
it's like the assassin of the DNA.
Yeah, but in a positive manner, we hope. We'll have an update a month from now about how this clinical trial is going, so we'll be able to bring some insight on that.
So look out for the updated schedule with the, I guess we'll throw that on the end right before Christmas. All right, guys, that's it for this week. We'll see you next week. Guys, Power Panel.
Take care.